Welcome back, everybody. So this week I have Jessica Heckencamp. Hopefully I pronounced that right. From Kaleidoscope. Is it Interiors?
Yes.
And so we're going to talk about a lot of different things. I've been wanting to have some more women finishers on my show, and I finally convinced you to come on. And so we're super glad to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right, so just give everybody kind of just a little bit of a background of what you do and kind of like where you've come from in your business and kind of where you're at now.
So it actually probably sounds kind of crazy, but I worked as a vet tech for a long time in ICU with horses, and I had a lot of friends, and the guy I was dating at the time, who is now my husband, worked in the trades, and they always seemed to be doing pretty well. And I remember having a conversation one day, and I was like, if you can find me a job where I can make over $20 an hour, next thing you know, I was doing some side jobs with them, a little bit of painting, a little bit of tile, laying sod, all sorts of stuff. And they were like, well, if you like painting, why don't you join the painters union? And I was like, I don't know, I guess I could check that out. I was 20 years old at the time, and my vet tech job was only paying $9 an hour. I really didn't want to live in my dad's basement for forever. I get along with my dad, but you know, when you're 20 years old, you just want to go out and have fun with your friends.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, fine, I'll try it. So my husband, who I was dating at the time, worked on construction sites, ran into another female painter, and he said, hey, you know, what does my girlfriend have to do to join the painters union? So she told him, you know, there's this test you have to take, and then you got to get a job. And then it was kind of cool because through the union, you go to school 1 day and 1 night a week, and then you work 4 days on the job sites with the other guys. So it's a really good opportunity to kind of do hands-on learning. So I was really interested in that because I did good in school, but I didn't like sitting in a classroom. So I went in, I took the test, and then we had a friend that like worked for one of the shops, like ordering products and delivering them to job sites and stuff. So I asked him if he thought he could get me an interviewer if they were hiring, and he said, yeah, sure, come on in. So I met with the supervisor and got hired at Union Hall, and that was kind of my first taste of it being really a man's world. I walked in and they were like, well, you know, just so you know, you have to take this test, and a lot of times people don't pass it. I was like, well, here you go, I already passed it. And he's like, well, a lot of the shops don't like to hire women. And I was like, well, I already got a job too. So I did things a little backwards. A lot of times people go into the union hall first and then take the test and get the job, but it worked out for me. So for 10 years, I worked for the local 781 Milwaukee Painters Union, and I am a professional journeyman painter by trade now. Sometimes in winter, work gets slow and I would get laid off. And I had a friend whose family owned a furniture refinishing business, so I would go there sometimes to work for them in the winter, learning how to like strip and sand antique furniture, stuff that had water or smoke damage from like fires or stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got into it. And then as far as how I started my own business, I was working in a church, and one of the secretaries there asked me, she's like, I really want to get my cabinets redone. Would you do it? So I called up my friend Tara, whose family owned the furniture refinishing business, because I knew that her dad had done cabinets in the past, and just said, hey, you want to try doing a set of cabinets with me? And she said, sure. And that was about 5.5 years ago. So it's just kind of word of mouth after that, just more and more cabinet clients. And now it's kind of weird because I don't hardly do any interior painting anymore, which is what I originally did. So
nice.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because my friend's dad used to always say painters make crappy finishers and finishers make crappy painters. And we used to joke with him like, you're wrong, Papa Pete, we're going to break the mold. We're going to be good at both.
Nice. So. There's something to be said about being able to do a really nice brush finish. And you know, you got a lot of these guys out here that are doing that fine paints of Europe stuff. And man, I mean, it's meant to be brushed, and that stuff lays out like a sprayed finish.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of that. I haven't worked with it yet, but it looks pretty amazing.
So I'm curious. So I know that you primarily do water-based now and maybe a little bit of hybrid systems, but so did you start in the furniture just with like nitro lacquer and pre-cat in that furniture shop?
So my friend's furniture shop, I only worked in a little bit in the winter time when I was laid off, but they used a local company in Wisconsin that made a water-based finish. And they were a
Oh.
little bit into cleaner stuff. Like they used like a citrus-based stripper and stuff like that.
Mm.
So when I was laid off, I just kind of got stuck at the stripping table and the sanding and then got to watch them do the finishing. But through my apprenticeship, we did everything from like ceilings, walls, floors, woodwork. We did some like faux finishing. We did some glass etching. So we really got exposed to a variety of products, lacquer, oil-based, water-based. And I actually remember not really liking water-based when it first came out.
Yeah.
It's just different. Like the solvent stuff just dries faster. And when you're on those big construction sites, a lot of times it's super dusty or dirty and there's other trades going through. So you got wind kicking up dust and stuff. So I didn't really like it at first. But I definitely think like the newer stuff coming out, the water-based lacquers and stuff, they just dry a lot quicker. They have a lot better like vertical hang, some of them. So it's really come a long ways. And my spray room is actually attached to my house. So I don't like to use a lot of chemicals inside my house. So I just kind of went the water-based route for the most part.
Talking about women in finishing, my good friend Thomas Craven, he's actually had quite a few women over the years. And
Nice.
a lot of people say that they make better finishers than men. So I don't know. I've seen a lot of good ones.
That's something that I think has definitely been interesting. Like when I started at my first shop, there was over 200 guys and there were only 2 of us girls. And the other girl was in her 50s and she was married to one of the shop supervisors. The union shops have like a industrial side and then like a decorating side. So she was married to the supervisor for the industrial side and they would do more like sandblasting and the insides of like tanks for breweries and stuff like that. And then I was on the decorating side and then I was off work for a while because I was in a car accident and I hurt my shoulder real bad. In my second shop, there was 5 of us girls at one point, which is almost unheard of for the union. And the guys at the second shop were pretty nice. The guys at the first shop actually, after a couple of years, admitted to me that they made bets my first day. And most people didn't even think I would make it through the day. And the longest anyone gave me was a week. So the guys at the second shop were a little bit nicer, a little bit easier to work with. But even them, they were like, the girls can't spray, the girls can't do this, they can't do that. So it was definitely a little bit rough once in a while, but there was always a couple guys that were real cool, take you under their wing and kind of show you the ropes, teach you whatever they could. And actually my supervisor at that shop was real cool and we got real busy and there was a church that needed like a whole basement remodel. Like we were spraying an epoxy based product on the kitchen walls because it was like an industrial kitchen and then doing all the spraying the door frames, so everything from like bare drywall to finish. And I got to go into the shop and spray the doors. And that was kind of like the big thing that kind of earned me a little respect because I got to take that job, me and one other girl from start to finish. And I got to go into the shop and spray the lacquer on the doors. And after that, my supervisor texted me that night and I'll F&A, like, dang, those doors look good. He's like, you're my new lacquer girl. And all of a sudden, a bunch of the guys in the shop, like, word kind of started to get out. And they're like, hey, what's this Kenny saying you're the new lacquer girl? And I was like, I guess you guys were wrong and the girls can spray.
Nice. So why do you think that that's the case, that it's so male dominated? Do you just think that a lot of women just don't get into the industry, or?
I think up here in general, like the skilled trade unions, it's like hard hat, safety glasses, steel toe boots. It's just been a male dominated industry. You're definitely seeing a lot more girls get into it, especially with like the furniture finishing end of it and the more DIY stuff now. I'm not sure why not as many girls go through the apprenticeship. I think it's a great thing to go through and I'm glad I did it. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think we'll start seeing more and more women getting into finishing.
It's interesting because the class that you came to at Corey's,
yeah.
I felt like it was a pretty like almost like a 50-50 split
Yeah.
down the middle of women and men. So so my buddy Greg, I had him on last week, and he's a big fan of women finishers. And one of the things that he said, and I think it's true, you guys seem to be more willing to, I guess, put the ego aside, and you know what you know, but you're not afraid to ask what you don't know. And I think that's cool. And also, I think that women attention to details pretty high. I think it's great. I would like to see more of you guys out there pushing on social media. And I think you're right. I see a heavy concentration of that in the furniture finishing. Yeah, I'd like to see more and more of those cross over into the cabinet refinishing too. That'd be cool.
I definitely hope so. And I think we're starting to see a little more of it. I think you're right, though. Like, even my old supervisor, every time there was like a punch list, like things to go back and fix at the end of the job, they would always send us girls. And he's like, same thing, just better attention to detail, like a little more finesse, feathering things in to help it blend. And I actually had an eye doctor tell me that a lot of women have a fourth cone in their eye. So you're actually able to see more colors and more detail. So I thought that was interesting. I'd never heard that before. Nice. But I think we'll see a lot more women getting into it in the future. And family that are women that are like, hey, we're stuck at home. I want to do this project. What do you think? What should I use? And I always tell them, like, send me before and after pictures. I'm going to put together an album of quarantine projects that you guys did. So
let's come back a little bit. So you got started in water-based. That's kind of interesting because most finishers get started in solvent. So what were some of the early water bases? Was it green light coatings? Was that one that y'all were using? Because they're up in that direction. I wonder if that's what they were using.
No, so we're like maybe 30 minutes from East Troy. So they were actually using General Finishes.
Oh, okay, cool.
That was the original one that I had used. And then after that, we worked with some ML Campbell because there's a local distributor out of Jackson, which is about an hour away. And a lot of the large construction sites, one of the classes that we had to take was like a green building, or like the LEED certification. That's the leadership in energy and environmental design. So certain job sites would require like green building and green products and this and that. So but at the same time, we also had a lot of jobs that were like, nope, we want lacquer, we want oil-based. So it was kind of cool because I got to deal with a little bit of everything, depending on what every job site has different specs, and whatever's written into the specs, that's what you're using. So you don't get to pick, you get told what you're using, and you just have to learn how to use it. But yeah, it works out.
Well, and that's interesting because that's what I get a lot of flack from people like, why are you using so many different things? Well, one of the reasons is I just have the breadth of knowledge to be able to do it. And the other thing is I always try to meet the customer's specific situation. Like, I'll give you a great example. Today I went to look at a job and I took two different samples. I took a Renner sample and I took a Milwalkee sample. And it's not that one is really better than the other one, but people have different tastes. So I like to, do you like this option or that option? And they definitely had an opinion on which one that they liked. So I think that's cool to be able to have that experience to branch out and not be stuck in one avenue. Yeah. So let's talk about some equipment stuff. What are you using equipment wise?
So I have a variety of stuff now, but I started out with a really old Graco Airless. I was pretty lucky because in my apprenticeship, like, we got to try HVLP, we got to try Airless. We did a tiny bit with Air Assist, but not much. We even got to do a little bit with like the electrostatic sprayers, like for metal.
Those are awesome.
Those are cool because it'll like wrap right around whatever you're spraying. If only everything we sprayed did that.
Right, for
real. So right now I have a really old Graco Nova that I use for spraying primer, and that's an Airless. I have a Titan Airless, and I have a CA Technologies Peak H2O water-based Air Assist. I don't spray with the HVLP. I broke my wrist when I was little, and just like the weight of the cup gun all day, it's just ain't happening. I mean, I can do it, but it's painful, so I don't. Yeah. And there's plenty of other options.
It's interesting. You're not the first person that's missed it. I was surprised, like, when I've done a couple of these classes, a a lot of women that I've used the HVLP that actually like the Airless or the Air Assist because it's so much lighter in their hand. I know a lot of people are afraid to use Airless, or they think HVLP is better with water base. What's your opinion out of the three of those? What's the easiest? What do you like the best, or do you see any difference in the performance of those with the water based stuff?
So I personally like Airless the best, but I think that's what I worked with the most. So it's what I have the most experience in. So it's just easier for me. You know, it's the same thing as anything else. You use it every day for 10 years and it becomes like second nature to you. I do like the Air Assist, and I think it's a little more finicky getting the settings done. When I first started with that, it was kind of a whole new ball game. So you got to putz around with the settings, have like a better variety of tip sizes to kind of play with. I like the fine finish tips, or for Airless, or the new Tri-Tech tips for the Airless. For my CA Tech, I'll spray with anything from like a 209, 309, or a 211, 311. So I like the smaller tips with the higher fluid pressure and less air when I spray like that. I don't know if it's just because I'm used to spraying with Airless. That works easiest for me, but I feel like I get the finish to lay down better that way. And as far as HVLP goes, you know, when you're spraying a whole kitchen full of cabinets, I don't want to be refilling the cup. Like I said, I don't use them because of my wrist, but on top of that, you know, I've had a few kitchens that are like 60 doors. I mean, not a lot. Most of them are like 30, maybe 40 pieces. But I've had a couple that are 60, and you don't want to be constantly refilling that cup. Like, that's just an added step in the middle of spraying that I don't like to deal with if I don't have to. Sure. And I think I prefer Airless just because it's what I'm most used to. But I also think you run into maybe less issues with the thicker water-based finishes. They can push it through no problem, and it just lays out like glass. So
glass factory.
Yes, definitely.
So it's interesting that you say that, because there's kind of two schools of thought out there. And I'm kind of talking about Air Assist here, is that you have the guys that come from the solvent world and they say run low fluid pressures and more air and with bigger tips. But like my experience has been exact opposite of that. Russell Kurgelis, Matt Slater, Dennis Rodriguez, like all of us that shoot water base all day long, we keep telling these guys and it just keeps like flying over their head. So I'm still trying to understand the mechanics of some of that, and I'm getting closer and closer to getting some answers on that. But and let's talk about that for a minute, because one of the new technical guys from Milwalkee, and this is not throwing him under the bus, but I was interested because you're shooting a lot of Milwalkee, and then I also want to talk about that specific pump, that 14-1, because a lot of people say you can't spray water base out of it. So I want to kind of jump into that a little bit. But when I talked to him recently, he was saying he was using like a 411 and he was running, so at 25 on that machine, it's a 14-1. That would be somewhere around 350 to 400 fluid pounds roughly. And then he said he was running like 18 to 20 triggered air. And I was like, I don't know how you're doing that. Like I can't do that and make it look good. So I don't know what you're doing. So we started talking a little bit, and I was like, hey, the next time you shoot it, just try that and see what you think. So what's your opinion on that?
So I tried it on some sample doors, shot all my clients' doors and then tried a few sample doors. And to me, it was just, you can get it to come out. And I did get one of the sample doors to look nice, but it was just, in my head, I was like, oh, no, because as I'm shooting it, it just looks super splattery as it was coming out.
Uh-huh.
And so when I learned in my apprenticeship, it was one pass. Like, that was before all these fine finish chips came out and stuff, though. So if you were using Airless, it was like one pass and go. So now I'm like, okay, 2 passes. But if you have the air pressure and fluid pressure set that way, like I did 2 passes on a sample door and it did not look pretty at all. And so then I was like, okay, keep going, get enough product on to make it look nice. And I ended out doing it at those settings for like 5 passes. And I don't know, wet, it looked disgusting. It did dry nice, like it did tighten down good. But realistically, for me, when you're in a production setting and you have 30 doors to spray, I'm not doing 5 passes. I'm doing 2, one each direction or one diagonal. So I just really like it with the higher fluid pressure and less air pressure. It just lays down nicer and faster. And to me, I guess the other thing is, like, during my apprenticeship, a lot of times those pumps were like in and out of so many job sites. The gauges are so full of overspray, you can't even read them. So I really learned like how to just like by eye, as you test your spray pattern, like what it should look like. And so I just kind of ran mine that way, which is why I kind of laughed the first time you asked me, like, oh, okay, so did you have like 400 or 600 pounds of fluid pressure? And I was like, I don't know. I think when I turned it off, the gauge said like 42. I was like, I don't really look at those.
Yeah.
So, but I did do the test, and I did get a door to look nice, but from a production standpoint, it's not the way I personally would run one of my jobs, because it just took too many passes to make it look nice with the lower fluid pressure. So,
and what size tip?
This morning I was spraying with the 309.
Okay, 09.
I usually do 209, 03, or 9 are my favorites.
Yeah.
I like the 209s. I know some people don't like those because they feel like your overlap's a lot smaller, but that's the way I learned how to spray, is overlapping 50%. And the other thing that I wanted to mention that I noticed people doing, I hear a lot of people saying they're having problems with bridging and stuff. And I don't know if it's because a lot of people spray with HVLP, but I noticed when I watch people in these classes spray with Airless, like they're not overlapping enough, and like they also don't like I was taught to hold the gun like perpendicular to the surface, like not tilt it. So when you tilt it, you get like an uneven fan pattern, and that can cause some issues and stuff. And same thing with the air assist. Like, so I spray perpendicular to the door, and because I'm used to spraying with Airless, I probably spray a little bit further away because I was taught 50% overlap and about 10 inches off the surface.
Yeah. You've hit so many great points. Like, it's good to hear it from someone that they even know like what a lot of us have even talked about.
No.
So it's fabulous. But you're saying the same thing that what we've been finding. And so I want to hit on a couple of things to just kind of elaborate a little bit. So the first thing that I heard you say was that the better the spray quality on the surface off the gun, the better it's going to lay down. Absolutely. So that's number one. All right. The second thing I heard you say was when you lower that fluid pressure, it makes it worse. So you want as high as you can get fluid pressure, and then try to reduce your air as much as possible. Now, there are some coatings that you have to get above 20, 25, some of these water bases. They're all a little bit different. You're also using a small tip, an 09. And then this is something new that I'm exploring, is smaller fan patterns. And so it's probably one of the reasons why that works so well for you, especially with air assist, is what I've been learning is the way that the tips are cut. Okay. So this sounds really backwards, but this is really interesting. So the wider the fan pattern, so if this is like the V in it, the smaller the tip cut is. Right. So you actually have more restrictions. So you hear a lot of guys having trouble with like tails and things like that. Sometimes if you go down a tip size, like you go, like say you're having a problem with a 308. If you go down to an 07 or an 06 or a 2, it can help that V, and you'll actually reduce your tails.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting. Now, also, I'm curious about your opinion on this, but I feel like with air assist, because you have that fluid and air pressure, I get less bridging, or it's less problematic with bridging than the airless is. Have you found that to be the case, or?
I feel like, honestly, when I first started hearing people talking about bridging, I was like, what are they talking about? Because I don't really have issues with it. I don't know if it's because I do tend to use like my go-to tip for my airless is the 208. My go-to tip for my air assist is the 209. So I don't know if it's because I already use the smaller tip sizes with the smaller fan pattern, or if it's just because it's been so ingrained in my head for how many years, like to make sure you're super, super perpendicular, like to never, like I don't shoot at those cracks. Like I see people tip, and
Right. Yeah,
sometimes you have
sure.
a door that has a profile that maybe needs it. But then when I do it, I do one super fast, quick pass with my Airless with the primer and have the primer tinted the same color as the top coat so that you don't have to spray at it more than once. And if you do that with the Airless, like you got to move like quick.
Yeah.
So
Well, and the other thing that I heard you say is like this is something that I really didn't understand. And from the classes, you start picking up on this because everyone's shooting the same coating, and you'll have
yeah,
one person that comes on along, no bubbles, nothing. The next person, it's like they got bubbles on the finish, and I'm like, what's going on? That's weird. And so you start paying attention, and like what you're saying with Airless, if you get too close,
yep,
that's when you can have those problems with bubbles and stuff in your finish because basically you're just like injecting it straight into the surface. And
yep,
that's one of the drawbacks to water based, unfortunately, is that surface tension, and it holds bubbles super well and all that. It's just, like I said, it's getting better and better. Some of the new stuff I'm shooting, I can't even make it have bubbles in it. Like it shoots
that's
so good,
good.
you're just like, oh my gosh, like this is getting to be like, solvent, it's
Yeah.
getting closer and closer. So
Yeah, I definitely think a lot of these new waterborne lacquers shoot a lot more like solvents, which I'm really happy about because, like I said, with my shop attached to my house, I can't exactly spray solvents all day long.
yeah.